Hello everybody, this is Yoko's Anime Reactions, and hang on, dang it, that's my place. I figured I'd do some ratings. You notice I have a new book. I actually bought 3 because I had a $75 Amazon gift card, but the other 2 haven't come out yet, so yeah. Anyway, this one is the Dragon Soulmate is a mushroom princess. I'm like, what? And I read the synopsis, I was like, this sounds interesting. And so, I picked it up. Let's see. Okay, prologue. Agnes, I've met the one I'm meant to be with. I'm gonna have to break off our engagement. Agnes Lefort felt her heart sink as she stared at the young man who just declared this in a booming voice. They were at a glamorous ball held by the royal family. Why was he bringing up such a delicate personal matter and causing a scene on an occasion like this, with so many royals and aristocracy in attendance? Philip wasn't in the direct line of succession to the throne, true, but as the king's nephew, he was still a fine catch. But Agnes hadn't realized until now just how stupid he really was. She knew he was naive and foolish, sure, but she credited him with some brains at least. That had been her mistake. Her hitherto betrothed himself, Philip Visage, stood resplendent in front of her. He was dressed in a distinguished red frock coat that seemed to have been specially chosen to highlight his importance and consequent arrogance. A girl was clinging to one of his arms, eyes sparkling wetly with devotion. Oh, so that's Philip's type, is she? Cutesy cute girls. Agnes's bright pink, peach blossom-colored hair was tied up in a pristine coil with nary a stray hair to be seen. She wore no hair accessories, but Agnes sounds like she's cute, so... or at least beautiful, so what the heck? Her dress was amber-hued with barely any embellishments or adornments. It was all told quite plain. The girl clinging to Philip, however, had golden brown hair and loose curls and wore a blue lace-covered hair ribbon that shook whenever she moved her head. She wore a dress in a matching shade of blue adorned with more bows and lace. Her hairstyle was much simpler and less intricate than Agnes's, but with its adornments was eye-catching. The two couldn't have been less alike. A chasm of difference lay between them. And apparently, Philip's taste clearly laying on the side Agnes wasn't on. She stared at the girl's golden brown curls. Noticing her gaze, the girl took a step back, huddling behind Philip. How ludicrous. The girl was acting like Agnes was some sort of evil witch, intent on keeping her and Philip apart. The person you're meant to be with, eh? Yes, I found my other half. My dragon mate. The one. Boo you. If he's actually a dragon? Wow. Freaking arrogant dragon, my butt. Philip puffed out his chest and spoke these words with pride. It seemed he hadn't noticed the look of distaste on Agnes's face. It was said that the royal family had dragon's blood. Of all the tales concerning the dragon's blood, the most well-known spoke of dragon mates. It was said that when one encountered one's dragon mate, both would instantly know that they were destined for one another. None could divide them. It's unclear how much truth there was to this, if any, but that was what the people believed. He's pulling the dragon mate card right now? Alright, so she and Philip hadn't been in mad, passionate love, but their union would still have been a favorable one. She trusted him. He was the only one outside of her family that seemed immune to the sprouting of the mushrooms. She could feel her heart growing cold and hard against him now. The transformation was instant. At the same time, anger began bubbling inside her. How could he do this, after all the studying she'd done to learn how to act ladylike for him? All the hardships she'd been through, all the stress she'd endured, it was all for naught. Even worse, she could feel the mushrooms getting ready to sprout. He can't be freaking serious. A screw came undone somewhere in Agnes's mind. She snapped. I wasn't born yesterday, you know. It's obvious you're just doing this to try to legitimize your infidelity. Agnes finally let her smiling mask fully slip, leaving a disgusted sigh. Philip blinked, processing Agnes's remark. Yes, he must be shocked. Agnes had always been so obedient and docile, but in reality, Agnes had also always been the type of girl to speak her mind when she really had something to say. Yes, she was the Count's daughter, but she had her own goals in life, and so she'd held her tongue all this time. But there was no reason to hold back any longer. Mind your tongue. Is that how you speak to a member of the royal family, within whose veins runs the blood? I doubt that highly. Alright, why didn't you break off our engagement before things got to this point then? Because I knew you'd never agree, obviously. You could have done me the courtesy of discussing it with me first. Give me some sort of warning. You can hardly blame me The mushrooms. Don't use the mushrooms thing as an excuse. Just be honest. We're engaged, yes. We're engaged, yes, but I've been screwing another woman. So now I'd like to switch to her. Please. That's essentially what he would have had to say. That's all you had to say, but go ahead. I'd be delighted to cut off an engagement to a snake of a man like you. Your rudeness is entirely inappropriate. I found my dragon mate, damn it. You were just a fake mushroom. What the fuck? Like I said, the mushrooms have nothing to do with this. Because apparently he was okay with it before. Unable to disguise his annoyance any longer, Philip raised an eyebrow, casting his gaze over Agnes's head. Guards, throw this woman in the dungeon. She has insulted the king's nephew. She clearly needs some time to cool off and think things through. The guards hesitated, exchanging nervous glances. They seemed unsure as to whether or not they should follow Philip's orders. Still, one could hardly blame them. They were only present at the ball on security duty, and they're understandably hesitant to get involved in something serious as the breaking off an official royal engagement. Besides, the order was coming from Philip. He was a royal, yes, but not a very important one. Ultimately, though, they couldn't just ignore his order, not when he kept playing the royal card in such a loud, obnoxious way. What a shameful example of class privilege. The guards reached out reluctantly to grab Agnes's arms, but she evaded their grip, feeling quietly sorry for them. Get your meat hooks off me. If I'm to be sent to the dungeon, I'll walk there myself. As for our engagement, I couldn't care less. Call it off. But just let me ask one thing. What? I won't change my mind for anything. I'll have you know our engagement is dead. I don't give a tiny rat's arse about that. Make it official, in fact, as soon as humanly possible. Then what? What is it you want to ask me? Agnes scowled, staring right into Philip's frowning gray eyes. If you care so much about dragon mates, why'd you bother getting engaged to a fake like me to begin with? And are you sure that girl standing there is the genuine article? Hey, I don't trust your shoddy judgment at all. Philip's expression hardened instantly. He reached out and yanked one of the guard's swords. Really? You're going to resort to attacking her? From its scabbard. A sword glittered in the light. Beautiful. Fine, go ahead, cut me down. That way Agnes could go from being an adulterer's jilted ex-fiancé to an adulterer's ex-fiancé who he'd then threatened with murder. Either way, everyone would end up taking her side. After all, she'd clearly been treated poorly for a member of the nobility. Not only had Philip callously chosen to end their engagement at a royal ball of all places, but on top of that, he'd drawn a sword on his poor betrothed, herself a daughter of the aristocracy. I'm having a bad feeling they're not going to side with you. I don't know why, though, but... Philip may have been royalty, yes, only just, but even he wouldn't be able to exhibit this behavior without facing punishment. As long as Agnes didn't do anything to damage the Lefort reputation, then it was all fine by her. Yes, cut me down, but make it quick, before the mushrooms sprout. Agnes pressed her lips together tightly, and glared right at Philip, trying to face fear head-on. What's all the commotion about? A booming voice interrupted them. It belonged to a handsome young man with Prussian blue hair who came shouldering his way through the crowd of interested onlookers. He had the same dark gray eyes as Philip, and wore a fine black coat? What am I talking about? Embellished with gold embroidery. Both these features identified him as another member of the royal family. Unlike feeble Philip, however, this young man emanated an aura of kingly chivalry and dignified manliness. All of the royals boasted extreme good looks, but none more so than this young man. He's kind of a knockout. Whatever are you thinking, Philip, disturbing the peace of His Majesty's ball, and pointing a sword at a lady? Claude, this is none of your business. Kind of making it his business now. Upon hearing the name, Agnes knew immediately who the young man was. Claude Visage, the fourth-born prince. He was second in line to the throne after the current crown prince, ahead of his two other guild brothers. Agnes had heard that Prince Claude was employed as a knight. Philip had barely ever swung a sword, which only became all the more apparent when he stood in proximity to the prince, who carried himself in a way only a trained soldier did. Rumors of the prince's swordplay hobby went far and wide, but no one look at him showed it was clearly more than a hobby. The king personally tasked me with sorting out this disturbance. If you won't listen to me, then we'll head to my father directly and you can answer to him. I think that's the king's nephew, so his uncle. Take him to his uncle. Philip gulped audibly. Perhaps it's starting to sink in just how much of a colossal man-child he's being. I was merely putting this woman in her place. She took the news of the dissolution of our engagement with poor Grace and insulted my honor in the process. As Agnes stared incredulously at the pompous Philip, who somehow seemed convinced of his own righteousness, she started wanting to sprout a mushroom on him. No, not just one mushroom. She wanted to sprout them all over him. I can't remember if he was immune to it or not. I think Claude was... I don't know. Maybe Agnes really would live up to her hated nickname after all. Perhaps this was her time to really shine. But no, reason must prevail. Frowning slightly, Claude turns to face Agnes. Please tell me what happened in your own words. He was asking her. Asking Agnes, rather than just taking Philip with all his royal status at his word. How unlike Philip Claude was. He seemed fair. Lord Philip informed me that our engagement was off. When I told him he should have been honest about having found someone else, he told me that she was his dragon mate, and that I'd only been a fake. He didn't like my reaction to that, so he announced I was to be sent to the dungeons. I asked him why he bothered to get engaged to a fake in the first place, and questioned his judgment regarding his new paramour. This angered him, and he drew that sword on me. Yep, that's exactly what happened. It was what the fuck? A pregnant pause? What does that mean? Then Claude sighed audibly. His handsome features were colored with distress as the women in the nearby crowd began to whisper and exclaim in shrill voices. Clarify a few things. This woman is your fiancée, isn't she? Like I said, I just broke it off with her. I found my dragon mate, and... Are you seriously a member of the royal family? Yeah, question it, Claude. Put this guy in his place. Claude knit his brows in disgust and cut Philip off. An engagement is more than a verbal agreement between two parties. It is a binding contract between houses. You can moan about it being over all you like, but the fact remains that you two are still officially engaged. This fuss achieves nothing and only damages your credibility. Nonsense. I found my soul spirit. What the fuck? When? When did you find her? Huh? Claude plucked the sword from Philip's hands, glancing at the girl with the golden brown hair. When did you meet this dragon mate of yours? It was about a month ago. Aha! So Philip had been cheating on me for an entire month. Philip's infidelity was obvious, but he was truly a fool to admit to it in a public forum. Yeah, everybody just heard that. He just admitted to cheating on you. And why did you not dissolve your engagement at that time? Well, According to the writ of Dragon's Blood, once one locates their dragon mate, they can love no other. By your own admission, you loved this woman a full month already, and yet you did not dissolve your engagement. Why? Whether that woman is your true dragon mate or not, it remains a fact that you've behaved unjustly. You've disrespected not only your fiancée, but the woman you claim to be your dragon mate as well. As Claude handed the sword back to the guard, Philip's expression clouded over. Yes, but... Faced with the truth that he'd been secretly unfaithful for a full month, Philip found himself at a loss for words, and faced with his clear superior, he was visibly cowed. While Agnes's angry words hadn't affected Philip at all, he was unable to deny Claude's admonishments. Philip was a simple man, but he knew when to bend rather than break. Agnes knew he was a bad guy, but she couldn't help feeling a pang of pity for him. He had been her fiancé, after all. Still, since things have come to this point, perhaps we should resolve them once and for all. Do you acquiesce to the dissolution of your engagement? Claude's dark gray eyes found Agnes's. She'd only one thing to say. Gladly. She couldn't bear to remain engaged to pathetic Philip for even another second. Claude nodded. Then I shall inform the king directly so that the engagement's dissolution can be made official. I shall see you at home myself, my lady. Thank you, your royal highness, but I'm fine. Agnes had already drawn far too much attention to herself. The last thing she wanted to do was be seen with eye-catching Claude. Oh yeah, this guy would be eye-catching. Besides, her mushroom alarm bells were ringing. But Claude leaned in, lowering his voice. Don't want to get caught up in the gossip mill now, do we? He was right. They were at a royal ball with many fellow aristocrats in attendance, and her altercation with Philip had drawn quite a crowd. No doubt the crowd would swoop in on her as soon as Claude left. Agnes was a mere count's daughter with no influence of her own. Escape would prove difficult. Okay then, thank you. No problem. Claude grinned as she accepted his offer. The crowd was getting even louder now, but Claude didn't seem to be concerned. He was probably used to being surrounded by screaming women. He was a prince, after all, and a devastatingly handsome one at that. Girl! Incidentally, Philip, has there been any kind of sign? The abrupt change of subject took everyone, not just Philip, by surprise. They say that when one whose veins flow with the blood of the dragon finds his or her dragon mate, there'll come a sign. I've never heard that. I'm sure you're making it up. Philip seemed agitated and disturbed, but Claude simply stared at him, a hint of amusement on his features. Of course you haven't heard of it. It's a tale passed down among the blood of the dragon only, and you have no such blood. Don't be absurd. I'm a royal. Dragon's blood flows through my veins. yeah, you might be a royal, but that doesn't mean you have the dragon's blood. If you truly did have dragon's blood, but there was no sign, that'd indicate that you had not, in fact, met your dragon mate. Ha ha. Using logic and facts. No one was quite sure what kind of sign was being discussed here, but if Prince Claude, second in line to the throne, brought it up, then it must be true. Accordingly, if Philip was claiming that there had indeed been no sign when he met his soul spirit, I'm assuming some kind of sign would have been like, I don't know, some kind of magic symbol on their skin or something to show that they're bounded together or something, I don't know. Then this would surely cast doubt on his claim to possess dragon's blood. Conversely, if Philip insisted on his dragon blood lineage, then this would cast doubt on his claim that the woman who'd taken his fancy was truly his dragon mate. Either way, the haughty and prideful Philip would lose face. He might have been able to throw his way about and bully Agnes into submission, but he'd no such chance with Claude. At an impasse, Philip merely stood there, cheeks bright red, as if he was in a pot of hot water that's slowly been brought to a boil. Either way, what we do know is that your engagement is off, and you decided to pursue this other woman instead. In the future, I implore you to comport yourself with greater dignity as a fringe member of the royal family. So now you're barely royal at this point. Having said this, Claude reached for Agnes' hand. Startled, she pulled away. No thank you, my prince. I can walk unassisted. It was gallant of him to reach for her hand, but she had to decline. Mushrooms could sprout at any moment, after all. Frowning slightly, Claude nonetheless nodded and headed off in front of Agnes. Feeling hundreds of eyes on her as she went, Agnes beat a hasty retreat from the ballroom. You're a feisty one, aren't you? Surely there was no need to provoke him that way. Yes, he was in the wrong for turning a sword on you, but you really put yourself at risk back there. Claude was speaking to Agnes over his shoulder as he walked in front of her. Agnes nodded. Claude seemed mildly impressed, but he was undeniably warning her here. I know, our engagement was off either way. There was no need for me to put my neck on the chopping block. She could have just taken Philip's rejection on the chin and left the ballroom quietly under her own steam, but she was too mad at that. After all, her efforts had ended up being for absolutely nothing. She'd seen red. So then, why'd you do it? As Claude turned to look back at her, Agnes thought she could hear him gasp a little. No doubt this was because he realized that her eyes were glistening with tears. If you asked me if I loved him, the answer would have been no. Well, we've been engaged for ages. I always found him high maintenance and rather annoying, yes. But I still saw him like a younger brother, even though he was older than me. And then there's the thing with the mushrooms. Never mind. Anyway, I tried my hardest to be a refined young lady, so as not to cause any embarrassment for the royal family. But it was all a waste of time, apparently. During the confrontation, Agnes had been fueled by a mixture of rage and indignation. But now that she was removed from the scene and had calmed down, she was struck with the fear of intense emptiness. He found his dragon mate, I guess. I was just a fake. Expendable. Everything I've been through. There was no meaning to it all. I was just going further and further down a dead end the whole time. I gave him everything I had, but... So you really did like him, after all? Claude's question was softly put. Agnes shook her head. No, but it hurts to be told you're not needed by someone you'd planned your whole life out with. Agnes felt wretched. A tear slid down her cheek. And even worse, this quarrel is going to cause big problems for my family. I fear the worst about that. It all came back to family. After all, she'd only gotten engaged to Philip in the first place for the good of her household. Not only was that all gone now, but she'd also managed to besmirch her family name as well. Agnes felt paralyzed with sudden regret. If only she'd been able to punch Philip just once. Right on the nose. She would have felt so much better about everything, but no, that would have only made things worse. Yeah, that would have made you feel good in the short term, but the long term would have been worse. She couldn't risk her family for one golden moment of sweet, sweet satisfaction. A white handkerchief suddenly appeared under Agnes's nose as she stood there, hanging her head. She looked up to see those dark gray eyes fixed sadly on her. Thank you. I'm okay, though. I better not wipe my eyes. They'll just get all red and puffy, and I don't want my family to suspect that something's wrong. I want them to think I'm okay with my engagement ending. Why? I don't want to worry them. They're good people. Really good people. It sounds like you've put up walls between yourself and them. It was true. Agnes wasn't her parents' true child. So, what, was she adopted or something? She didn't feel like it'd be appropriate to explain her family dynamics to Claude. Indeed, their entire conversation so far had been inappropriate. This wasn't the sort of thing one discussed with the prince. Agnes took a deep breath to center herself. Your Highness, I apologize for all the trouble I've caused. Thank you for saving me from being thrown into the dungeons, or worse. It's fine. He doesn't have the authority to order that anyway. That may have been true, but there was always the risk that Philip might really have lost his temper with her. After all, he'd been holding a sword at the time. What do you plan to do now? After all this fuss, I doubt I'll get any other marriage offers. Even if I did, I'd have to consider the mushrooms. I mean, the circumstances. A lot of young men in the aristocracy feel like they have the right to have affairs, so girls like me who speak up about it aren't popular at all. I know that much. Indeed, Philip had looked at Agnes with pure hatred in his eyes once he realized she was shaming him for his romantic indiscretion. Of course she wouldn't have had to say anything if he just kept it in his britches to begin with. But that thought had never occurred to Philip. Still, perhaps Philip's very idiocy was what's been keeping the mushrooms at bay. I should probably tell you, Your Highness, that I'm originally a commoner. I should probably go back and make a living among the common folk. I wouldn't go that far. How kind Prince Claude was to listen to her woes. All because his father, the king, had ordered him to intervene with his nephew's troubles. It was no doubt just an act of royal family image preservation. But without it, Agnes would have been in a rough situation indeed. Still, she didn't want to bother this prince with her affairs any further. Blinking back to her, she smiled brightly. I can't let my family know about this, but thank you for listening to me. I hope your own dragon may comes to you in due time. Agnes bowed politely and boarded the carriage. Claude reached out to help her board, but as she was not a true-born lady, there was no need. Conboard Agnes could leap up into a horse carriage with the best of them. Wait, even if your eyes don't puff up, the tear tracks alone will give you away. Take this. Once again, Claude offered her the pure white handkerchief. But I've no way of returning it to you. Besides, when she looked closer, she could see the royal emblem embroidered in one corner. This wasn't an item to be lent so lightly. Just take it. Gazing deeply into Agnes's eyes, Claude pushed the handkerchief into her hand. How kind he was. Philip never showed me such consideration. In fact, oh, but to blazes with Philip. Alright, well, thank you for the handkerchief too, on top of everything else. I doubt we'll ever meet again, but I wish you good health. Her fingers brushed Claude's palm as she took the handkerchief. Blinking in alarm, Agnes could only watch as a bright red mushroom sprouted from the surface of Claude's white... Oh, boy. So it's physical contact what causes the mushrooms to sprout? Plus, high rising emotions? From the surface of Claude's white gloved hand. Oh dear, what's he gonna do? She identified it immediately. Amanita muscaria. Its vivid red umbrella-shaped cap was spotted with little white bumps. As she recalled, it was highly poisonous. Uh-oh. Get that off him. Now. Claude was gazing at it too. He looked shocked. Of course he was. Agnes had no idea how to talk herself out of this situation. Oh boy. What an absolutely stunning mushroom. You don't want to eat that. While Agnes was agonizing over what to say next, Claude reached out and plucked the mushroom off of his glove with his other hand, holding it up and admiring it. I've never seen such a perfectly perfect specimen. The bright blood red of the cap, the snow-white dots. What? For some reason, the stunning prince was still standing there, holding the mushroom, muttering insane things. The coachman was standing by, waiting to close the door for her. Agnes shot him a look, and they both nodded. Closing the door quietly on the prince, the coachman then spurred the horses into action, and they sped off. Agnes had no idea what all that was about. She decided it'd be better not to think about it. A lot had happened, and she was tired. Agnes sat back in her seat, putting all thoughts of her day's events out of mind as she sped off towards home. Once she got home, she had to let the servants know she was back before retreating to her own room. Okay, hang on, let me check the time. I don't want to record too long. There we go. Okay, I think that's a good enough time. I will see you guys next time.